Hi, I'm Steve from the Stonecrafting Workshop. Welcome back. Today I'm going to do a very quick chat on how to replace an angle grinder blade. If you already own an angle grinder, you probably know about that. But I'm also going to talk about which way up you put the angle grinder blade itself. Do you put it face up? Do you put it face down? There's quite a lot of controversy on the internet about that, with some people being dogmatic one way or the other. And let's talk about that, and then I'll try and put you straight on that one. So join me in the workshop. As you can see, I don't have a shortage of angle grinders. I've actually got at least another two lying around the workshop. I've been using them for 40 years in my work, and for the last 30 years they've all come with the same feature. All angle grinders, they have a spindle lock. This one has the spindle lock on the side. This is a Hitachi, and you simply depress this button on the side and it locks the spindle so that you can loosen and tighten the blade. This 9-inch, my favourite tool of all time, is a 9-inch Bosch angle grinder. Has a big button on the back that does the same task. Difficult to handle at this sort of angle, but there you are. It's locked, and I can actually undo and tighten up the blade by depressing the spindle lock. Spindle lock locks the blade. This little cordless version has the same thing. It's just a big square button on the back. The blade, so they all have spindle locks. Right, so let's replace the blade on this angle grinder. I'll use this one. The first thing you do is unplug the angle grinder from the power source. You really don't want to be holding on to one of these if it accidentally fires up. You'd be surprised how little fun that is. First thing you do is find the spindle lock button, press it, the blade will turn, press the button, and then it'll find the locking position and it'll lock the blade in position. You can't turn it either way. Okay? You're going to use your angle grinder spanner. An angle grinder spanner has two lugs on it, two pins, and the pins locate in the holes on the locking nut on the top of the blade. You simply locate them in the holes, turn it, and it loosens. Let's have a quick look at the lock nut. On one side the locking nut is flat, and on the other side it has a raised circular lug. You would use that when you're putting on thicker blades. If you're putting on grinding blades or thick cutting discs, you would put the locking nut that way down, and that helps centre the disc. Let's have a quick look at what's behind the blade. Behind the blade there's a backing plate, and if you turn it over you'll see that there's a recessed section with two flat sides, and they're designed to fit on the flat sides on the spindle itself. And you simply drop that into place, and then that won't spin. Okay, that's fixed in position. Put your new blade on, making sure that it's centered over the raised section in the backing plate, and then put your locking nut on the flat side down. In this case, because this is another cutting blade, it's a flat cutting blade, hand tighten it. Use your spanner. I'm still holding the spindle lock button, and simply tighten it up. Don't over tighten it, you don't need to. When you fire the angle grinder up, the rotation going anti-clockwise direction will tighten up the nut, so you don't have to worry about it coming off. Let's change it for another type of blade. This type of blade is a depressed centre blade. Depressed centre blades always go with the depression downwards, so that the locking nut is nestled into the recess of the blade. Okay? You'd never put it the other way down, because if you put it the other way down, it's bringing it much too close to the blade guard, and in this case it wouldn't even fit. So all recessed blades go with the recess downwards so that the locking nut nestles into the recess. Same procedure to tighten it up. Find your spindle lock, lock the blade. You can turn them up by hand a little bit, then use your spanner just to squeeze it up and grip it. Let's put on another type of blade. Take our lock nut off. Take off the blade. And I'm going to put this one on. This is a grinder disc. It's 6mm thick, and it's a common feature among grinder blades that they're much thicker. And because we're doing that, because we're putting on a thicker disc, we're going to turn the locking nut over and put it with this recess section downwards. And what that does, it helps to hold the blade centralised on the spindle. But it's the same procedure apart from that. Hold down your spindle lock and tighten up with your spanner. Job done. What can you do if you've lost your original angle grinder spanner? If you've got an angle grinder spanner that doesn't quite fit the holes in the locking nut on your grinder, you can use it by simply putting one of the pins in a hole if it fits, and then having the other pin lock on the outside of the locking nut. There we go. And to tighten up, you do it the other way around. If you can see that, there we go. I've simply put one pin in one hole, and I've got the pin on the outside of the locking nut, and you can tighten it up. So that's one thing you can do. There's a couple of other things you can use. Pair of pipe grips, that will do the job. Grips. I will do if I adjusted them properly. There we go. Always using the spindle lock button. If you get really desperate, if you've got a nut that's really whacked on there so tight you can't move it using either of those methods, you could try using pipe grips, Stilsons. But if you did that on something this size, you would need some help. But you could do it if it was really firm. The main thing is not to tighten the nut up too much when you're fitting the blades. As I said in the intro, we're going to talk now about which way up do you put the blade. Just for reference, we're going to say that this is the machine lying on its back. The blade is face up, and the direction of rotation is anti-clockwise. I can show you that. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. There. So the blade in this configuration is anti-clockwise. Why am I being so careful? Because if you turn the thing over and fire it off, from this side the blade is going in a clockwise direction. So for our purposes, we're going to put it on its back. We're going to say this is face up, and the blades run in an anti-clockwise direction. Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk about the different types of blades. You have diamond blades, diamond cutting blades. We have carborundum and aluminium oxide resin bonded blades. And then we have a few specialist blades, and we'll talk about them as we go through. Diamond blades first, deal with the simple ones. All diamond blades, every single diamond blade I've ever bought, has a directional arrow showing you the direction of rotation that the blade needs to be in. So, and you fit that accordingly. So this one because the arrow is anti-clockwise, you would put on label up and fit it that way, so the blade would then go in the anti-clockwise direction. This one is a Parkside blade. It also has a directional arrow, which is also anti-clockwise. And this one has an arrow which is anti-clockwise, which means the label is going to be upwards. In fact, every single diamond blade I've ever bought has a directional arrow on it. Arrow, anti-clockwise, label up. Here's a brand new blade I've never used. Arrow, rotation, anti-clockwise, labelling up. When I say label, labelling or printing. So as far as I'm concerned, all diamond blades will be fitted on your angle grinder and you're going to fit them label up, with the label facing away from the machine. Let's talk about the second class of flat cutting blades. I've been using carborundum blades, silica carbide blades, and now aluminium oxide blades. I've been using them for 40 years, as I said, and I have always tended to put them with the label upwards for two reasons. Firstly, all these blades come with a metal washer type ring on one side. And I think when you put that on to the backing plate, put that down hand, put the locking nut down hand tight, and then you put your spanner in place and you tighten it. And what you can see is that the locking nut is moving against a blade that isn't moving because the backing plate isn't moving. If you had the blade and you were fitting it the other way up, as in that way up, the locking nut would be turning on the carbide material and you'd be slowly but surely wearing the locking nut. You'd be wearing it away. Now, I don't think it's hugely critical. I don't think, I've never had any effect of the locking nut wearing away, but then I've always used these blades label up. The other good reason for fitting them in this configuration is that when you lay the angle grinder on a bench, it's easily readable. If it's that way up, you can only ever see this portion of the blade, so it's not really very readable. So that's why I've always put flat cutting discs in that configuration with the label up. Now it'd be nice to say, wouldn't it, that that's the rule then, all labelling has to be upwards. Sadly, the world's not that simple. Let's take this off and I'll show you another blade. This blade is a depressed centre blade. We've showed you it before. The centre goes down, and in this case all of the printing is on one side, giving you all this safety information. Absolutely not a mention about which way it should be fitted, up or down, etc. But we already know that you have to fit it that way up because it won't fit otherwise. And in this case, all of the labelling is going down, with the writing and printing closest to the body of the machine, and the locking nut is going on, and you're having to tighten it against the carborundum side of the blade. And interestingly, what happens when you tighten it up is that the blade is turning. Now we know the locking backing plate at the back of the blade isn't turning because you've got it locked. And that means that the metal rim is turning against the material at the back, protecting in this case the backing plate from wear and tear. So what that tells us is that it's not really all that critical which way up you put it, apart from in purely practical terms, will the blade fit? Let's just put one more type of blade on. This is a carbide grinding disc. It's made for being used for grinding the tops off of nuts and for welds off the top of metal in that configuration. The face of the blade is actually this, the cutting face is that. Usually this one's well used. And they're thicker. And in this particular case, which way up would you put it? Well, it has to go with the recessed side downwards so that the locking nut is nestling into the thing. But in this case, it actually has a washer on both sides, and that's common to a lot of grinding stones. Not all of them, they vary. And in this case, as I said before, you would put this with your locking nut with the boss in the middle downwards. And in this case, both the backing plate and the locking nut are being turned against steel washers. The steel washer that's mounted on the blade. So, what's the rule? Do you fit blades label up? Do you fit them label down? Well, first of all, it doesn't matter unless it says something on the blade itself. So the real rule about the label is read it. Have a look at the safety instructions about what you can and can't do with that particular blade and fit it accordingly. Thanks for watching. I hope this is of some use to you and hasn't confused you too much. If you've got any questions, please ask in the information section down below, and I'll try and answer your questions if I know the answers. If this is of some use to you, please give me a thumbs up. Quite like those. And if you feel that this is of some use to you and I can be of some use to you, please subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.